everyone, welcome back to my channel, and I'm so glad you joined me because I'm starting a new series that will last 4 weeks, and basically I'm just going to fill out my sketchbook with little nature paintings. So I'd love if you join me. You can grab your sketchbook and either paint what I'm doing, or if there's something that inspires you that week, you can paint whatever you'd like to and just hang out with me while I paint. So I'm super excited to kick off this little series and see how it goes. If you're new here, my name is Winslow, and I really just love to spread joy through art. So I hope that you stay with me through this series and maybe find a new passion for yourself or a new way to relax when you're at home. Let's go ahead and grab our paintbrushes and get started. All right, this is week 1 of just doing cute little sketches in my watercolor book, so you can follow along with what I'm painting or just sketch whatever you want in your own watercolor book. But my goal and my challenge to you is to follow this color palette. So I want all 4 of my sketches to look cohesive together, and so I made this little mixture of a palette that I want to include in all of my paintings. So I think that they're going to look great together, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to be using my Winsor & Newton watercolor palette, which I love, and then I'm using my Strathmore watercolor paper. So I already did a little sketch for what I want to draw here. So I'm going to do a little landscape with a sky. So I want to incorporate these pinker tones in the sky, and then greens in my trees, and then of course the blues also in the sky. So let's go ahead and just start with our sky. I am going to use a lot of white in my painting. That's how I get these muted tones. So I'm mixing up white with blue to start, and I'm just going to go for it here at the top of the paper. And I want to use the wet on wet technique. So I'm just going to wet the entire area that I want to do the sky so that the colors are going to blend together really well. This is one of my favorite watercolor techniques just because I love the soft look that the wet and wet technique gives. It really makes the colors just naturally go together. And here's where I'm going to start incorporating some of those pinker tones. And we're just going to mix up the white with the red to get our little pink. And I'm just going to start tapping that in very softly. Now, clouds are just something I had to practice for a long time. You know, I'm still working on it. It used to be really hard for me to get just a well-blended sky, just because I feel like you have to work pretty fast with this before the paper dries up. So if you need to pause the video while I'm doing this to focus, you are welcome to do so. And I'm adding a little bit of purple at the bottom of these clouds here. So I feel like that's really what kind of helps define the cloud, is adding that towards the bottom. And I'm just going to add a little bit more up here. I want these clouds to look really nice and fluffy. So just working while this paint is wet. And I think I could use a little bit more pink in there, so I'm going to add more. Just tap that in. As the paint dries, it kind of becomes lighter. So if you feel like you need to add more pigmentation, go ahead and do that. And I feel like I want it to be almost more corally, so I'm just going to add a little bit of orange in that mixture. And just add that in. Now I'm leaving spaces for the tree, which can be a little bit difficult sometimes. It helps to sketch it out. That way you know where you need to avoid before you even start painting. Okay, now I think that sky looks pretty great. Just make sure you have covered all the space that you want to with the sky. Actually, I decided I want to add a little bit more purple in there. So just mix up your blue and red to get a little purpley tint. And again, I'm just going to tap that here at the bottom of the cloud. Just keep working as long as you need to in the sky. If you finish before me, go ahead and just pause the video, or go ahead and skip forward if you need to. When the paint is wet, it kind of looks a little wonky at first, but it's going to look beautiful once it dries. So trust the process here. I think that's what always scared me with skies, is like, oh, it kind of looks a little bit weird when it's wet. But trust me, it'll dry beautifully. Now, while the sky is drying, let's go ahead and move on. I'm gonna do some little mountains behind our tree line. So I wanna make those really light. And I'm gonna kind of use that purple that we already mixed up and start to go at it here. We're gonna do a little purple and some browns in there. So go ahead and just mark out where you want your mountain to be. Or you don't even need to put one if you kind of just want to have a tree line. That is totally fine as well. This is your painting, so your time to decide what all you want to include in it. And I'm just going to go ahead and use some blues, maybe a little brown, and we're just going to add that in here. I'm just kind of making straight strokes here, because you know mountains have all those crevices in them. Don't have really a quite, you know, like a certain direction I'm going. I'm just letting my paintbrush drive here. I want to add a little bit more blue in there. Can kind of sense where, you know, you need to add certain colors. I always like to add blue tones where there are shadows, and it gives it some good depth. And just keep adding paint until you feel happy with it. Now I want to kind of just maybe add a little bit of more black and browns in there, just to tone it down a little bit. I might have gone a little too crazy with the blues, and that is okay. You can just keep adjusting your colors wherever you need. Sometimes it's a little hard to take away watercolor paint, but you can kind of layer on a little bit more if you need to fix something. I would say out of all the painting mediums that there are, acrylic, oil, watercolor takes the most planning, just because layering can be limited and taking away paint is limited. So just sketching out and practicing drawing really helps. Okay, I am happy, and I'm going to move on to our, I'm actually going to do the foreground first, and then we'll do a tree line. So I'm just going to take some green, this lighter green shade that we have mixed up. I want to take that, and basically I mixed that up by using green and white, maybe a little bit of brown to tone it down. And we're just going to add that here to our foreground. Now it just helps to go over the whole area, and then we are going to add in our tone or darker tones after we add the whole base layer. Just continue with that lighter green. Make sure you avoid the tree trunk that I just went over. And I always like to add kind of a little bit of darker pigments kind of around the edges. It gives it more of kind of a 3D look. So just tap that dark tone in around the area. Now let's go ahead and mix up a darker green. And we're just going to add some browns and blacks with our green to get that pigment. And again, I'm just going to go around where that tree line is. You can maybe even add some blues in there to give it a cooler tone. I like to, for the shadows, use that bluish green. And then whenever I want warmer greens, I'll add yellow in there. And you can always just add water on your paintbrush. If you need to help blend colors, it just helps to go over them again with a wet brush if you need to. And finally, I think we are ready to work on our trees now, so let's go ahead and mix up the green that we want. So like I said, with a warmer green, let's add some yellows in there. I'm going to start going at the foreground bushes, and then we'll go towards the back. Go ahead and cover the entire area. And I think something that will help our trees is to use different shades of green so that you can kind of see the variation there. So for the foreground ones, I want to have more of that warmer green, and then as we go back, I'm going to use a cooler green. So this one that we mixed up with our blue, I'm going to add a little bit white in there. I want to put these cooler greens back here. And I actually want to add some greens with maybe a little bit of red in there. So let's go ahead and mix that up. And I'm going to add that here. It'll kind of just help separate our trees a little bit. And make sure you have your darker tone ready. It helps to mix up colors on your palette here. That way you kind of have the colors ready to go when you need them. I really love using this watercolor paper because I've tried out a few different brands, and this one seems to hold wetness the best, at least what I've found so far, in that it'll keep the paint wet and I can continue to mix them a little bit longer than other paper that I've tried. So give this one a try if you haven't. It's linked in my description for this video. I have an Amazon storefront, so you can always check out materials that I use there. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the other side of the tree. And again, I'm going to actually take a cooler green here, add that in. Let's go ahead and take a black and a blue mixture. And actually go back over here. I kind of want to revisit some areas that I saw. Kind of get a little chaotic when I'm painting. I'll move on to an area and then I'll see something that I wanted to fix that I just worked on, and that's just how it goes sometimes. So I just kind of wanted to add a little bit more shadowing in the trees back here. Now going back over here, taking my green, filling in the whole area of where we want the tree to be. And then again, let's take our darker green by using our black and blues, and then we're just going to add that at the base of the tree and towards the side of the paper. Again, we just want to make sure we're adding those darker tones where we want to separate the tree. With watercolor, if you don't work with shadowing, it can tend to blend into like a blob, just because watercolor, you know, it blends together, it's water. So it really helps to just add those various tones. So again, I'm adding that bluish tone here at the bottom. And now I'm going to move on to our large tree. So again, let's mix up a nice warm green. And I want to keep that warmer green to one side of the tree. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to cover the entire tree and then we will go back and add in our shadowing. So go ahead and just paint wherever you want the leaves of the tree to be. And I'm leaving a little bit of space so that we can see some of the trunk. And I'm just going to do that here in the middle and then a little bit at the bottom. Just like this. And it helps to make sure the edges aren't too clean, and we want to make it look like leaves are sticking out. Now let's go ahead and go in with our darker greens. I'm just mixing up green, maybe I'll do some red just to have some variation in our greens here. So we'll do kind of like a reddish warm green, and I'm going to start putting that. That's a little bit too red for me, so I'm going to tone that down. There we go. That's a little bit better. So I'm putting that, like, I don't know how to explain this, kind of in clusters. Like I want to separate the leaves in the tree into like kind of circles, if that makes sense. And I call my artistic style semi-impressionism, so we want it to look loose. So we're not going through and like showing individual leaves here, but we want it to look like clusters of leaves, if that makes sense. Maybe, maybe not. Now let's go ahead and take our darker green, so a little bit of green, maybe black and blue, and I'm going to take that again, kind of following where we put that red, just around areas that we want to define. Now I covered the area that I wanted the tree trunk to show in the middle, so let me just go grab a paper towel. One second. So I'm just going to take water and just dab it a little bit here. There we go. And then let's just continue on adding those darker greens again where we want them. Going with a little bit more black here, so you don't want too much black though. I don't like to use black too much in my watercolor paintings. I try to just take darker tones with blue because sometimes the black can just be a little bit too harsh. I add a little bit where I want to, but mostly I'm taking my darker tones have more of that blue in there. And I'm just kind of making little squiggles with my paintbrush to add where I want those. Helps to kind of go out of where we were painting. Add some variation. So now that I have that tree finished, I'm going to take some of these darker pigments and just add that a little bit more back into the horizon line here. Actually, I don't know if that's called the horizon line. Basically the line between our grass and our trees. I don't know what that line is called. Tree line, maybe. Let's just go ahead and add that so it helps separate our trees from the ground a little bit better. And I think that makes it look a lot better actually. And continuing to just dot that in where I see a need for the darker tones. Okay, now finally, let's go ahead and I'm gonna add a tree trunk. So let's go ahead and mix up a brown. And I'm just taking brown and white to start with, because we want to start lighter and then we can go in and add our shadows. So go ahead and add this in here. It kind of helps clean up the area where we might have gotten green here. And then we're going to make sure we add that in if you left any blank space between your leaves. And then let's go ahead and just take our darker brown. So just take brown with a little bit of black here. And we are going to add that into the side of the trunk. And then we're just going to take our brush and mix it up a little here. And you don't want it to be too perfect of a line, because tree trunks aren't perfectly straight. And go ahead and add that in up here. Now that I'm basically done with this painting, the one thing I see that I feel like I'm missing from my little palette that I identified here is this color right here. So I am just going to go back and add some flowers around the edges here in that color. So let's go ahead and mix up the red, a bit of brown here.
like this. And I want to just kind of add these in around the foreground here. So I'm just gonna make really short brush strokes to do petals here. And we want to do some bigger ones in the front and then have smaller ones go towards the back here. I'm just adding it in the back, kind of in a dotted motion to make them look really small here. A little bit over here as well. I'm gonna do another big one, maybe up here. Let's go ahead and add some darkness to these. So I'm just adding a little bit of darker pigment to the bottom of the petals. Same for these back here. And I don't want to add too much because I do like the way that our grass looks up here. So I'm just going to add in a few where I see that they might fit. Let's go ahead and add another flower here. And we can kind of make it look off the page, so it gives it a little bit of dimension. And now that we have some flowers added, I'm just going to take my darker green again and make sure that we go back at the bottom and maybe give them a stem if they need. Add in that dark tone at the bottom. We want to also add that to the group of flowers that we have back here. Just gives it a little bit more dimension. And finally, just adding some more maybe grass marks at the bottom. So just swiping up with my paintbrush. Maybe we want to add some like weeds in there. So I'm just adding dots around some of my lines, just like that. And I'm happy with how our painting looks, so give this one a try. I think we followed this palette pretty well, and we're gonna do another painting next week, so join me for that. I hope you all enjoyed week 1 of the sketchbook series and join me for the next one. If you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to me, and you can always find me on social media at Watercolor with Emily. Until we paint again next time.